Hi, my name is Lina Waleed. Today I will analyze the poem I Could Not Stop for Death by Emily Dickinson. Pre-reading. Authorial background. Emily Elizabeth Dickinson was an American poet, little known during her life. She has since been regarded as one of the most important figures in American poetry. Dickinson was born in Amherst, Massachusetts, into a prominent family with strong ties to its community after studying at the Amherst Academy for 7 years in her youth. She briefly attended the Mount Holyoke Female Seminary before returning to her family's house in Amherst. Historical background. American Romanticism, like other literary movements, developed on the heels of the Romantic movements in Europe. Its beginnings can be traced back to the 18th century there. In America, it dominated the literary scene from around 1820 to the end of the Civil War and the rise of realism. It arose as a reaction to the formal orthodoxy and the neoclassicism of the preceding period. It is marked by a freedom from the authority, forms, and conventions typical in neoclassical literature. It replaced the neoclassic emphasis on reason with its own emphasis on the imagination and emotions, and the neoclassic emphasis on authority with an emphasis on individuality, which places the individual at the center of all life. While reading, the main idea, the central theme of Because I Could Not Stop for Death, is the interpretation of mortal experience from the standpoint of immortality, a theme stemming from what is the defining of eternity as timelessness. The poet uses these abstractions: mortality, immortality, and eternity. The type of the poem is an example of lyric poetry. Rhyme scheme is AP-AP. Meter is alternating between iambic tetrameter and iambic trimeter. Form is 4 quatrains. Poetic devices. The first quatrain. Because I could not stop for death. Here, in the first line, we have personification in the word death. He kindly stopped for me. Here, in the second line, we have assonance in the words he and kindly, and immortality. Here, in the fourth line, we have personification in the word immortality. In the second quatrain, we slowly drove, he knew, no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too, for his slavery. Here, in the second quatrain, in line 1, 2, 3, and 4, we have metaphor. Here, in the third quatrain, we pass the school where children played. Here we have kinesthetic imagery in the word passed. Their lessons scarcely done. Here we have end stopped. We passed the fields of gazing grain. Here we have allusion in paced the fields. We passed the setting sun. Here we have imagery in the word passed. And we have in the third line and in the fourth line anaphora in the word we. In fourth quatrain, we paused before a house that seemed. Here we have metaphor in a house that seemed. A swelling of the ground. Here we have metaphor in the second line. The roof was scarcely visible. Here we have visual imagery in the third line. In roof was scarcely visible. The cornice, but a mound. Here we have anaphora in the word the in the third line and in the fourth line. Here in last quatrain, sentence centuries, but each. Here we have consonants in tes and centuries in the sound s. feels shorter than the day. Here we have ran online. And in the third line, I first surmised the horses' heads. Here we have alliteration in the sound H, ha, in the word horses and in the word heads. Where toward eternity, here we have caesura. Post reading. The tone, which is the voice of the poet or speaker in the poem, is calm and measured. In addition to, the tone is the narrator preparing for her death. She is getting ready, making a journey with death as she gets ready to move on into the next life. Mood. The mood seems airy because she is with death throughout the whole poem, and death is waiting to take her. Diction. Dickinson uses light in formal language and then dramatically uses the words death, immortality, and eternity by expressing death in an extraordinary terms. She makes more of an impact when she implies that these mundane things such as the carriage or the house actually hold the weight of eternity. Style, because could not stop for death, is made up of 6 quatrains or 4 lines, stanzas. Subjective response. I think that we can take it that the speaker has no fear of death. Death is kind, drives with care, and has a formal politeness about him. Moreover, we find out the speaker's ride with death took place centuries ago, so she has been dead for a long time. But it seems like just yesterday when she first got the feeling that horse heads, like those of the horses that drove the death carriage, pointed toward eternity, or in other words, signaled the passage from life to death to an afterlife. References. Thank you.